Good morning. My name is Justin Guillory from the Committee of 70. Once again, we're excited to be back with our next edition of our Studio C70 student candidate interviews. We're doing things a little differently this morning. We have a high school fellow from the Committee of 70, Amelia Dennis, who is a graduating senior from the Baldwin School in Montgomery County. She will be interviewing Dylan Altemara from Altamara. I mispronounced it, Altamara, from Allegheny County. He's running for one of the District 9 in the Allegheny County Council race that's coming up on next Tuesday's election. Dylan, thank you very much for being here. Amelia, I will turn it over to you, and thank you for doing our interview.
Thank you. So my first question was, can you just briefly tell us a little about your background, education, and experience?
Sure, absolutely. So number one, thanks for having me. My name is Dylan Altemara. As you said, I'm a candidate for Allegheny County Council District 9. And just to give you a little bit of my backstory. So I'm a fourth generation Mon Valley resident. My family's been, involved at different levels of Mon Valley politics for a very long time, but that's not the reason why I'm running. The reason why I'm running is because myself, I have over 10 years of experience on the operational side in K-12 education, higher education, nonprofits, and with the federal government. So when I look around the various communities that make up this district, I think I possess a lot of applicable experience that addresses the issues that are front and center on people's minds, whether it's blight, a lack of behavioral health, mental health, and substance abuse treatment services, services for seniors, services for our kids before or after school, crumbling infrastructure, tax relief targeted to working class folks and seniors. So that's the sort of some of the issues that I see as very important in this race. And again, I think I have experiences given my professional life that really lend themselves well to addressing those issues to make people's lives here in the Mon Valley hopefully somewhat better.
Awesome. So you touched on some issues that you find very important for your county. I was wondering if you could get any piece of legislation passed right now, what would that legislation be?
Yes, certainly, I think there's a number of things that I consider sort of important to this district. If I were in the seat right now, I would really be emphasizing two things actually. Number one, we have to do a better job of getting value from our nonprofits. So right now we have two, I would say, very large nonprofits in UPMC and AHN, who, don't get me wrong, world-class healthcare systems, but in terms of actually living up to their charitable nonprofit status, they're providing very, very little to our communities. So we have to, in my opinion, either get them to live up to their nonprofit responsibilities and provide more services, i.e., behavioral health, mental health, and substance abuse to our communities, or we need to negotiate an arrangement which will provide more of those services to our communities. Because right now, they're not paying taxes, they're getting to operate as nonprofits, but they're not really providing the services that folks in our communities need. So that's first and foremost. And then secondarily, as I alluded to, I think targeted property tax relief for the folks that live in districts and communities like District 9 is front and center. We have a lot of large corporations in downtown Pittsburgh and richer folks in the suburbs who love the idea of paying property taxes based on what their homes and businesses or commercial properties were worth 13 years ago. But what that's done is it's locked in this inequity where we have then lower and lower and poor income folks and also seniors who are really sort of left on the hook. So we really need to prioritize, and I certainly will prioritize, providing those folks with the targeted relief that they need so that they have a little bit more money at the end of each month to survive on. Obviously, inflation is an issue. Cost of living has been a problem in the last few years. Pennsylvania, unfortunately, is still at $7.25 an hour for the minimum wage. So we really have to be creative in terms of helping folks out, especially those at the lower rungs of the economic ladder.
Thank you. My next question would be kind of probably going along with that. Which county council committees do you think are kind of the most crucial, or which ones most interest you?
I think they all have different important roles that they play. For me, I think really health is an important one, as well as the budget committee. I think the budget committee as we saw in last year's budget, really plays an important role in setting the tone for the priorities of the whole body. And I don't think it makes sense for us to reduce the budget process to just something that takes place right towards the end when the budget needs to be passed. I think it needs to be a more thoughtful committee that tours the county, specifically districts in need like the ones that make up District 9. And I think it has to be sort of a year-round conversation so that way by the time we're about to introduce a formal budget, pass a formal budget, there's been multiple months of dialogue and constituent input so that the budget really does represent and reflect not just the municipalities that make up my county council district, but all 130 plus municipalities that make up the county. In addition, as I said, I think health is also very important just because, for those that aren't familiar, in the Mon Valley, we've had a long-going challenge with specifically, poor health outcomes as a result of years of, industrial, I would say, neglect. That's not to say those industrial jobs that U.S. still provides aren't important. They certainly are. But I think we have to find this happy medium where, we're modernizing operations, investing in our current steel production and all the jobs that it provides along the supply chain, while also addressing, the multiple decades long struggle, which has seen us unfortunately experience higher rates of cancer, asthma, emphysema. And I think it also plays a role, unfortunately, in higher rates of maternal mortality, particularly within the Black and Brown community.
Thank you. How do you plan to create job opportunities in Allegheny County or in your district?
Yeah, so I think it really one goes with the other. I think what we tend to see a lot is there is a rush to provide tax cuts and tax incentives to developers, whether that's on the north side in downtown Pittsburgh and other sort of, front of mind parts of the county. And that's fine. If we're going to provide that relief to bring in development, okay. But then what tends not to happen is the follow-up, which is if we're giving you this, what are we getting in return? Specifically, what are we getting for parts of the county like the Mon Valley, like the Allegheny Valley, that are, oftentimes I would say forgotten. And so what I would do is I would really kind of package and leverage my vote, where if any developer or any project throughout Allegheny County wanted tax relief or tax subsidies, I would consider it, but they would have to be in exchange for them to commit to, making investments in the Mon Valley and also committing to doing maybe smaller scale investment, which would create jobs in our communities, or partnering with other entities, whether that be the nonprofit, profit, or the philanthropic community, to make investments that could be targeted to bring dollars back to our communities. Because unfortunately, again, I just don't really think that sort of barter and trade is front of mind when a lot of these deals get put together. Unfortunately, really does tend to be very city of Pittsburgh specific.
Yeah, thank you. The next question would be, what environmental initiatives would you support?
Yeah, so I think, what we really need to prioritize, not just this year, but in the, years coming up and decades coming up is, as I said, U.S. Steel is, or has been, an economic lifeline for multiple generations of folks. It still provides an honest, well-paying union way of life for many, many constituents in this district, not to mention all of the jobs it supports in the supply chain. However, that being said, there's no denying what the environmental ramifications of their operations are. So I think as elected leaders, whether it's the municipal level, the county level, the state level, or the federal level, we really do need to invest and prioritize in modernization efforts geared towards making the health outcomes better and modernizing the operations to reduce some of the environmental fallout, specifically geared towards some of the air quality issues that you see throughout the Mon Valley. So, I think State Senator Piscatana recently introduced a bill that makes a lot of sense that kind of offers tax credits in exchange for US still doing more on their end to modernize and clean up operations. But I really think it does need to be a whole of government approach in order to ultimately accomplish the outcomes that are really required and necessary at this point, if that touches on your question.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Next question, what do you plan to allocate funds to within the county?
So I think one area, unfortunately, let me take that back. So when you look at a county budget, it really does indicate how elected leaders choose to allocate a very finite set of resources. And in Allegheny County's budget, which is just over $1 billion, currently we're spending over $100 million for the Allegheny County Jail, $100 million for the Court of Common Pleas. We're spending $40 million a year for the county police, about $25 million on the county sheriff, about $20 million for the public defender's office, over $20 million for the district attorney. So what I'm getting at is we are spending a lot of money to address people and intervene with people on the back end when they've already unfortunately gotten into trouble. But what we're not doing is taking some of that money and effectively targeting it towards ways to help people at the front end. So whether that's small business growth and development specifically geared towards the Black and Brown community, childcare, housing, behavioral health, mental health, and substance abuse treatment, other interventions that would for success. It's very, very easy to come back, like again, after someone's made a mistake and crack down on them. But what we're not doing is taking some of that money and being thoughtful about how we can help folks on the front end, get them over the hump and get them into situations where they're ultimately, set up for future success. And that's really what we need to prioritize. And that's what I would prioritize if I'm lucky enough to get elected. It has to be a conversation about how do we take county resources and repledge them in ways that help folks, particularly folks that oftentimes are at this point, I think, too accustomed to pulling out the short straw.
Yeah. My other question is, this is just for voters to get to know you better. What is a fun fact about you?
So I'd say a fun fact about me is that I am somebody who has really, really poor taste when it comes to just style. I'm somebody that will spend a lot of money on clothes, but they're probably really tacky and really gaudy clothes that most people probably wouldn't get caught dead in. So being a personal shopper is not something that I think will ever be a title that I possess. That's not to call out my style and say it's really trashy, but it's probably just not what most people, especially most folks in the Mon Valley, would say is like cool or in style or fly.
Got you. Yeah. Last question. So
Sure.
30 seconds. Why is it important for young people to vote?
Because they're the future. And unfortunately, they have not always been provided a seat at the table. I get that, but what they have to understand is, ultimately, a lot of the decisions that folks are making, irrespective of what level of government it is, ultimately impact them. When we're talking about education, when we're talking about jobs, economic development, workforce development, which is what I do as a 9-to-5 with the community college, like ultimately, it's having a disproportionate effect on the quality of life that they're going to have over the next many years until the next generation comes up. So they really need to be active and involved in the democratic process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you very much to both of you for a fascinating interview. You are the first county council candidate that we've had this cycle, so it's good to hear about some of the issues that the Allegheny Council is going to be facing in the upcoming years. So really appreciate your thoughts on that.
No problem. Hopefully I gave you some, thoughtful and articulate answers.
Absolutely. Just for those watching and who will be watching on our voter guide, election day is 5 days away, Tuesday, May 20th. It is a primary election, which is Pennsylvania has closed primaries, so you have to be registered as a Democrat or a Republican to vote on most races. Dylan is running in the Democratic primary for Allegheny County Council, District 9. Best of luck in the rest of your campaign, and thank
Likewise,
you for
thank you.
joining us. I'm sure it's been busy, so.
Yeah,
we
it's a little hectic, no question, but it was always great to take some time to speak to folks, to, not only share my platform and my thoughts on the issues facing folks in the Marne Valley, but also, just to exchange ideas. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Good luck.
You.
Thanks.